We are Rogue Media Sports.
With the Wells Fargo Active Cash Credit Card, you can earn unlimited 2% cash rewards on purchases you want and purchases you need. That means you earn 2% cash rewards on what you want, like season tickets to watch your favorite team, and 2% cash rewards on what you need, like paying for parking. That's the beauty of the Active Cash Credit Card. It's ready when you are, with unlimited 2% cash rewards. The Wells Fargo Active Cash Credit Card. That's real life ready. Terms apply. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/activecash.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is the Doomsday podcast, and my goodness, do we have a special edition for you today. In fact, the Hall of Famer himself, with the Cowboys getting ready to face the Green Bay Packers next week, we thought it would be a good time to book Brett Favre, the Hall of Famer, the Packer great, will be joining the Doomsday podcast in just moments from now. I did want to say this. Thank you to the folks at Harry's. You talk about a man who could use some Harry's razors. If you've seen Favre, he's let the beard go. I mean, it's gone gray. It's got some salt and pepper in there. Harry's razors is what he needs. Harry's is so confident you're going to love their blades. They'll give you a trial shave set for free when you sign up at harrys.com/doomsday. DOOMSDAY. Just pay for shipping. Harry's is all about a great shave at a fair price, which is why over 3 million guys have switched to Harry's. Unbelievable blades, the 5-blade razor, the German factory that puts these things out does an incredible job. Claim your free trial offer from Harry's today. $13 value for free when you sign up. Just cover shipping. The set includes the weighted ergonomic razor handle, 5 precision-engineered blades with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, a rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. To get your free trial, go to harrys.com/doomsday right now. That's harrys.com/doomsday. Harry's is HARRYS, of course, .com/doomsday. And it's a very special day in Doomsday land because even with the sadness of a Cowboys loss, and quite honestly, as we record this here on Monday, the horrible sadness and grief that is going on in Las Vegas, we keep all of those in our prayers and our thoughts that are impacted by this horrific tragedy. But I tell you, back to the mundane world of sports, we do have today one of the great guests in all the NFL, and his name is Brett Favre. Frito, I would like to ask you to go ahead and play the music now, sir.
All right, and now the moment we've all been waiting for, from the moment we saw the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys schedule, my focus turned to a former player, one of my all-time favorites, down in Mississippi, all the trips to Hattiesburg, standing outside this man's home, gated community he's in, one house in the gated community, Favre Manor. Anyway, last year Brett Favre goes into the Hall of Fame, and he recognizes me by name. So this year when I won the McCann Award and I gave a speech, I recognized Brett Favre. And here he is, Brett Favre, the biggest guest ever to appear on the Doomsday Podcast marquee. Brett Favre, how are you, and what are you up to these days?
Well, before I go any further, you said I'm the biggest. Am I the first to be on your Doomsday?
No, first Hall of Famer? Well, you might be the first Hall of Fame player. Some Cowboys players consider Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, both of whom have appeared on the show, and Jason Witten.
Okay, they got to earn their way in.
Yeah, but you were the first certifiable. Go look it up. Check out the Bust and Canton Hall of Fame player to appear on the show.
Okay, so you haven't talked your good friend Troy Aikman into it yet? Or
we have talked to Troy, and he's on board with doing it at some point, but I insisted that no quarterback come before Brett Favre.
That's true.
Best, most colorful storyteller. And I got to say, you and Troy actually probably are my two favorite players that I've ever covered. Now, you're completely different personalities, but but you both love the game. You both love structure.
It's funny you say that because, of course, I had a lot of battles against Troy, and I never won any of those. But I always had a tremendous amount of respect for him, and he was, he was the guy for a long time, and he was a guy that I envied because I wanted to be the Dallas Cowboy quarterback. When I was a little kid, my favorite player, it's still my favorite player of all time, was Roger Staubach. And there was nothing about the Cowboys I could not tell you. To have a chance, first of all, play in the National Football League is a tremendous honor. And although I didn't get to play for the Cowboys, I got to play against them. I got to meet Roger Staubach. I'd like to call him I think it's okay to say a good friend. I still get goosebumps when I talk to him. But with Troy, playing against the guy, Roger obviously was way before my time. But when I would play, I would look over at Troy and I'd say, man, you know what? Not that I had a bad job, but it's got to be pretty doggone cool to be the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. But more importantly, to be great and be a Dallas Cowboys quarterback. And Troy has done that as well as Roger, and Dak is on his way as well. But Troy and I have actually become better friends after the fact, and I think it's partly in due because we both have daughters, and that offers a certain set of I wouldn't say problems or circumstances or whatever.
Challenges?
That might be putting it lightly. Trying to manage that is the hardest and most important thing that you will do. Playing against Troy and Tony Tolbert and Charles Haley and Emmitt Smith, was tough. But managing your daughters, whew, that's tough.
It's something you just said there, Brett. Are you, and I've heard Troy talk about this exact same thing because, as you said, he has daughters and he's very invested in their lives. But he's said that he's actually really relieved and glad, and I think he's on record saying he's not sure what he would have done with a son when it comes to whether or not he plays football. And I'm just curious, you and Ed both have some grandchildren that have started to arrive. I believe, Brett, you've got 3 of them. Ed's on his first, but the kid's so spoiled, I don't know. I don't know if Ed can handle any more than this. Do you have thoughts on that? I mean, the more you learn about all this, even though you had this unbelievable career, does it... what would you be hesitant, or would you almost be relieved if perhaps one of your grandkids decided, I think I'll go with tennis or golf?
I have mentioned several times since retirement, my feelings or what my feelings would be had I had a son who chose to play football or wanted to play football and or chose that path. And I think I know a little bit more about concussions today, but in saying that, I probably don't know much more than the next guy because we don't know a lot about it. But what we do know is it's not good, and there's not a lot of hope in the near future. The obvious thing is to be able to stop them, and what I like to say is treat them. I mean, we can have helmets, we can do all these things, but can we treat the swelling? And I don't want to sound like a doctor, but I know that swelling in the brain is a big part of a concussion and what that does to you long term. And we know long term repeated concussions was just look at boxers, for example, the jabs, and then compare it to football, not the big hit, but the hitting your head on the turf, hitting your head on the turf. Is long term, there's not a whole lot good. You're going to get that trouble. So it's scary. It really is, and it's getting worse, in my opinion, because the athlete is getting better. The athlete is getting faster.
And we all saw the hits that guys like Devontae Adams took last week in Green Bay.
I didn't watch the game. I saw the hit later, and everyone's. I don't know Danny Trevathan, but and I never played linebacker, but I know in the heat of battle sometimes hits are made and they look like a guy purposely. I mean that hit could not have been any better or worse, however you want to look at it. I'm not saying it was a good hit, but I'm just saying, in Adams' case, it was a perfect storm, and then from Danny's standpoint, it was not. You're going to get fined now. You're going to get fined even when you certainly didn't mean to. But I think sometimes those hits are going to occur, and they're not deliberate. And I just find it hard to believe that a player today would be deliberate in a hit similar to that. And you're going to get fined. Whether you can even argue your case and make a good case for it, but that's not going to matter. But that's the whole point in our conversation, is that they're unavoidable. And even the most harmless, like in my case, the worst concussion I ever had was probably the most harmless of hits. It wasn't even a hit; it was just a push. And I slipped to the turf and hit the side of my head on the. It was a hard, icy ground, but it just happened, and I went blank there for 30 seconds or so, and who knows what kind of long-term effect that particular hit or ones like that will have on you. And so, yeah, I would have a lot of fear, because why even? I'd rather my son or grandson play golf, and I'd love to have a chance to caddy for him or something. It's just a lot. I mean, I can handle me to a certain extent. God forbid something happened to my family, I have to take care of me. But to have to worry about every time your kid gets hit and falls to the turf, it's just scary.
Brett, do you have any lingering effects yourself? Are you pretty much symptom free at this point, or do you? I mean, obviously you probably feel it when you wake up in the morning having played, but I'm talking about from a brain standpoint. How do you check out there?
You know what? That's a good question, and I have been asked that, especially more within the last year or so, as the tidal wave of concussion information and talks and movies and all these things come out. I get that question, and let me be honest with you. There's times I ask myself, is that a result of concussions? What maybe, and it's something as harmless as what or where did I leave my keys? Or, it's something that happens to all of us as we get older. Where's my glasses on top of your head? But I would say collectively speaking, I feel really good. I can't really point to anything in particular, which is great, other than I find that words that normally come very easy within a conversation. In fact, I was talking to one of the guys that helps me out here at my place this morning, and there's just a lot of area that I have this landscape planting, the shrubbery, and I could not think of that shrubbery. I need to spray it for a fungus, and I've sprayed it, once a year for 20 years since I've been here, and have pruned it and know the name of it, and I cannot think of the name of it for whatever reason. I see it every day when I pull in my gate, and today is the only day I can't think of the name, and that makes me wonder something so easy, yet it's very difficult. And as far as headaches, maybe dizziness, no. And I knock on wood. I feel very fortunate. Do I have some achings in my ankles from time to time, or get stiffer some days rather than others? Sure, I do. But to play 20 years and not just be on the team, but to play and to be sacked and to play fearless and to play the way I did, at this point, I can't complain.
Not to mention the many games you played, setting the NFL record for consecutive games before that hit. I think you're talking about that caused what you believe is the only diagnosed concussion you had. Was that the one at
well, there were two for sure. If you remember, many years before that, we were playing the New York Giants in Green Bay, and it was another one which I hit the backside of my head on the turf. It was a 3-step drop, threw the ball, got slammed to the turf. I actually ran back in. Doug Peterson came in for a play. I ran back in, and unknowingly, it was 4th down and 10. I threw a touchdown pass to Javon Walker and never finished. And then that was it. I didn't finish the second half. So those are the two where there was no doubt whatsoever that I had a concussion. And one of those, I blacked out and there was a period of time, 20, 30 seconds, where I was actually snoring.
Wow.
But you take every football player, Troy and I could both, we'd lose count of all the times that we got hit and our head was ringing, fogginess, but you were able to call play. You were able to go on the next, like nothing ever happened. And as we know now, those are concussions, head ringing, ears ringing, fireworks going off. I mean, I can't tell you how many of those I've had.
And you played at a time where there wasn't a neurologist on the sideline and they weren't looking at plays and calling you off the field to evaluate you. You just played through it if you could.
Well, you've covered it and been around football a long time, Ed. I played 20 years, but probably 15 of those were you were considered a wuss if you say, my head's kind of ringing, maybe I should sit out.
Yeah.
That was no. You get your butt back in there. You went back in and played. You didn't even question whether or not you should play. So totally, even though it's not that long ago, in some regards, it's like I can't believe we did that.
Speaking of young quarterbacks, as you weren't, but I will. What is your impression of what Dak Prescott did as a rookie? He's from your part of the country. I don't know what interactions you may have had with him as he was coming up at Mississippi State. But what are your impressions of what he did and his evolution in year 2?
Well, I mean, I don't know what the statistics show. You guys would be better suited for that. But I know what my impressions are, and I don't think that I have ever seen a better rookie performance ever by a quarterback. And statistics may prove that, but if they don't, my argument would be, first of all, the statistics were good. most important one, obviously, is wins. But he
only had four interceptions.
Only 4 interceptions.
I was going to say he threw the ball exceptionally well. He made great decisions. Didn't turn the ball over. Time after time, me included, I said, well, he can't keep this up. Next week, this is, in fact, I was at the Green Bay game, and I thought this will be kind of a humbling experience for him. He's played exceptionally well, but he hasn't played in an environment like this, blah, blah, blah. And I sat there and watched him, and I went, wow, was I wrong? Way wrong. And he just continued over and over and over again to, I think, outplay the expectations or lack thereof. And so we all look, guys, 10-year vets, 15-year vets, 5-year vets, they go out there and they stink it up in the best of circumstances. And considering how he got the job, and how he played after he got it, with the pressure of being a Dallas Cowboy quarterback, and the expectations that, look, we want to win now. We expect to win now. We have a good team in place. I thought it's the best I've ever seen.
Pretty remarkable words. Talking to Brett Favre on the Doomsday podcast. Ed Werder, Matt Mosley here. As you look also at this team, Brett, they fall yesterday and fall to 2-2. It's hard to get a complete wrap on this division. What do you make of you mentioned him a little while ago, Doug Peterson, your backup? Do you, as you sit here today, what do you feel like the Eagles are maybe the team to beat? We know the Giants are sitting there now 0-4 and seemingly out of it. What are the teams that really jump out at you? In fact, the Redskins going tonight to try to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. We have to be very cautious in ruling Giants out because we've seen this song and dance before. First of all, I know it firsthand when they started much like they did this year and came back and won the Super Bowl and beat us in the championship game. So you can't rule them out until mathematically they're done. I say that and lump it into the division as a whole, and there's several divisions that could make the argument of being the toughest. But I think the NFC, I don't think anybody wants to go play New York in New York. Dallas is fortunate enough to beat them already at their place, which is something they haven't done in quite a while. But Philly's good. I still give the nod to Dallas. 2-2. I mean, hopefully no one, in Cowboy Nation is hitting the panic button. It's
very reasonable. It's a very reasonable fan base, Brett. Not like Green Bay.
It's New England's 2-2. You'd be a fool to say, well, they're done. I think Dallas has proven to me, and I look at things a little differently. I think sometimes a loss or a couple of losses early is probably better than going 15-1, if that makes sense. Not that I don't believe that the Cowboys need to be humbled. I think they had a great year last year, but you know what? You could easily go back in the last year and say, we probably should have lost that game. We eked it out. And so some of those games that you probably should have lost, maybe you lose this year, but still, sometimes you learn a lot more and get a lot better in a loss, or certain losses than I don't think you get really better going 15-1, 14-2, you're 13-0 at some point. That's great, but you may pay less attention to the little things and dig a little bit deeper. After a tough loss, sometimes you go back to the basics. And So I think that's a good thing for Dallas. But I think Philly is, Doug, I think, is an excellent coach. I've known Doug a long time. I think he's got the mentality for it. I think he can relate to his players well. But I'm not knocking my old buddy at all. I just think the Cowboys are the team to beat in the division.
What do you think? The Cowboys obviously this week play the Packers, as I mentioned. The Packers are coming off a pretty incredible victory given the personnel. And they didn't have either one of their starting offensive tackles or lost both their running backs in the course of the game. Obviously, this is a franchise that through much of your career depended awfully heavily on the performance of the quarterback. What do you think about the situation Aaron Rodgers is in and his ability to persevere and win through it?
Well, I don't have a whole lot of compassion, and I mean that anyway, because you're right. It's kind of been the MO for quite some time, and that's okay. Because they look good. Aaron is Aaron. He's one of the all-time best. He makes a lot of things happen with his feet. He's got a great arm, but he's able to bail the team out because of his, his capabilities. And so, if you were to get a one-on-one interview with Aaron and you were to say, hey, would you, in a perfect world, would you love to have a tremendous amount of protection and have 3-4 seconds back there? And just, he may say, yeah, but I bet deep down inside, he kind of likes it the way it is, because it's what he does. And I can relate to that. Even when I had protection, I bolted because it was where I felt like I could make the most plays. And you kind of revert to what you are and what you do. And so the bigger the odds, the tougher the circumstances. I feel like that we're very similar in that regard. Is that you kind of under your breath, you're kind of smiling because this is kind of what you do.
And at the same time, when you reflect on, you only have, and the Packers are obviously fortunate, like the 49ers are fortunate in the transition that they went through from Montana to Steve Young, and they continue their level of excellence, as have the Packers, going from you to Aaron like they did. But in the end, as great as you were, you only won one Super Bowl, and so far he's only won one Super Bowl. It seems like that's the danger of not surrounding your quarterback with enough to win on a consistent basis.
Yeah, it's a great point. And who's to say? But it would be, if we were in court and you argued your case, I mean, it would be hard to say otherwise. That it gets you so far, but doesn't equate to a Super Bowl win all the time. And I can't disagree. But the flip side is you got to get to one to win one. And there's a lot of teams out there that would just like the opportunity to get into the postseason, especially on a consistent basis. So, I guess the old saying, you can't have it all, but you can have close to all. I don't think the Packer fans would have it any other way. We'll trade Aaron for, and I'm not saying that you're saying trade Aaron, but that we want Aaron, but we want a little bit more security, and so I tell you, Ted Thompson has really found those guys that he can plug in, especially at the skill position that, he really has taken over what Ron Wolf kind of made his MO. And you just plug guys in. And, I think if their defense, I'll say this, if their defense continues to play the way they're playing, they have a legitimate shot at going all the way and winning, because we know they can put up points, and it doesn't matter as long as Aaron's the quarterback, they can put up points. And if they can be as opportunistic as they've been and be as really as stubborn, giving up yardage and points, man, they really have a shot.
I got one more question I'd like to ask, and then, Matt, I know you have one about Tony Romo that you want to ask. Let me just ask you, Brett, as a guy who played past 40 at quarterback himself, how much do you marvel at the performance level of Tom Brady at 40?
Well, I sometimes I have to pinch myself or slap myself in the face and say, I can't believe it, because that makes me older. But Tom and Drew, first of all, are playing as good, if not better, than they've ever played. Which my best year, I'll say this, was my 19th year, my first year in Minnesota, right at 40 years old.
When you went to the championship game.
Considering it was my best year. So it can be done, but I think, honestly, I think Tom and Drew can do it. I can't even put a number on it. I can only put a number because you just assume at 45. Come on, you can't do it. But I think they do it as long as two things, and do it at the level that they're doing. If they don't get hit, and they seem to be, not that seems to be the case now. They're not getting hit, and they love it. So if they still love it, love to compete, and they're not getting hit, I don't see an end in sight. I really don't.
Wow, that is remarkable to think about.
That's scary for other teams.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Yeah, very, very scary. I bet you still have a little zip on the ball. Do you still show up with the kids at the local school there and zing it around a little bit?
I don't. Yeah, I don't go up there too often. On occasion, I do. And we live 5 minutes down the road, but we're usually traveling with Southern Miss volleyball, and so we're all over the place, and it's just too inconsistent. I keep up with them, have a lot of friends there, and really enjoyed my time.
And you won a state championship with Oak Grove as the offensive coordinator. Don't be humble.
Yeah, and I got out. I was smart. I knew.
It was the opposite of your football playing career.
Did you have to bring that up yet? I thought we were tight.
I thought we were off the air by now. That was just between us.
It's not comfortable
we
unless.
Had some fun, though, didn't we?
Absolutely.
People don't know is that you and I had planned that the whole time.
Absolutely.
The three coming out of retirements and having you come into Hattiesburg and me acting like you were a pain in the ass. And
that was the best acting job of all right there. Because
it was great.
The deep affection that you had for me and welcomed me inside the walls at every opportunity.
I bet you did peek out there every once in a while.
I made to Hattiesburg and stood roadside outside what I came to call Favre Manor, reporting on whether Brett today was going to play or not going to play, and who he's going to play for and who he's not going to play for. I got actually invited into the house one time. But it was a remarkable experience, and I could see why you would not want people like me on your property.
Oh, I would love to have you. In fact, I meant to bring you some sweet tea down there one day, but I don't know what happened.
Decided to make another pass with the mower.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Last thing for you, Brett. This you see Romo's getting all sorts of. It's funny. The guy got beat up on for years. One of the more polarizing quarterbacks in the NFL. Right or wrong, and it obviously put up some remarkable numbers. But he goes in the broadcast booth, number one team with Jim Nantz, and now it's like the guy can do no wrong. He's predicting every play. What do you make so far of Tony Romo as the number one analyst for CBS? Can he keep this up?
I think he's done a heck of a job. Tony. I've always liked Tony. I've always liked the way he played. I thought he always handled himself with a tremendous amount of class. Obviously a bright guy, and part of me wanted him to come back and not that he needed to redeem himself by playing anymore, but I hated to see him go out that way. But he, much like his press conference last year when he handled himself just with the highest of character and class in a tough situation. I knew he would do the same in the broadcast booth. So I'm not surprised a bit, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
How come you never? Does this give you any thought to making that your future, or you just at this point have no interest in the? Because I know I came down to Hattiesburg one time, and the president of ESPN knew I was going down there. Obviously, said, "Hey, have Brett call me. We'll do anything to get Brett. We'll pay him whatever under any circumstances. We'll do it if he'll join us." And I said, "Well, how much of an offer can I make?" And he said, "Just have Brett call me."
Yeah, well, you're right. We did talk about it, and I know several times you and I, off the record have talked about the do's and don'ts and whys and why shouldn't I and why nots and all those things. And, much like playing, the only difference in doing the broadcast stuff and playing is, one, you get hit, and there's a physical grind that goes along with it. But mentally, you have to prepare, and I think that's an element that people on the outside don't realize, that if you want to be good, you have to prepare like you are playing. As you should. But the time commitment to me was really what was kind of eye-opening. I knew it would take a little bit of time, but it takes more time than I'm willing to give up right now. And I really thought hard about the Monday night job that Gruden does. There was a chance that I possibly could have had that before John, way back before John. But and John does they hit a home run with John. He does a great job. But I didn't want to go 4 days. Basically you're flying out Thursday evening or Friday, and say you go to Seattle, and it's a Monday night game. You get back maybe Tuesday evening, and that's almost like playing again without the physical demand. So I think it would be fun. I think I would like the challenge. I think Troy does a tremendous job, and I know he prepares just like Tony would do, and all the good ones do. I could do that, but I kind of like my free time a little too much right now. And that's kind of why I wouldn't want to go to the next level coaching. I would love to coach. I would love to take my, all the knowledge I have and test it at the next level. But I'm just not ready to give up all my time yet.
You need one of those Elway president of everything type jobs where you can still help assemble all the talent, but maybe not having to be out there coaching it all or something like that. Troy has actually toyed with that idea. Like, he's not closed the door to sort of doing what Elway does. Would that appeal to you? Yeah, running an operation or an NFL team. Would that appeal to you ever, or is that does that sound like too much?
I mean, it's crossed my mind. It really has. If you're the guy in control, then if you want to go home, you can go home. But you also know that everything's going to point to you if it doesn't go well. And we all know there's going to be times when it doesn't go well, and how you handle that stress part of it. Or you're going to say, the hell with this, I should be coaching and being the GM and being the president. And shifting gears back to Troy, I don't know if there's a better temperament and personality and character guy to do it than Troy. I think he does a fantastic job on TV, but I think he would do an even better job in a role either as a head coach or as a role much like Elway.
Well, if only his last name were Jones, we might see that in Dallas. But alas, it's Aikman. So he's going to have to go to one of the 31 other teams in all likelihood if he wants to pursue that ambition.
Yeah, maybe. You're right.
Well, Brett, we really appreciate it. I always think of you when I come through toward Florida and stop at Letha's and get some of those ribs. I've seen your picture up on the wall, so I assume you've dropped by there a few times. But we really appreciate this. This was great.
Always great to talk to
it's
Brett.
always fun to talk to my buddy Ed. I'll say that,
And this conversation is like so many others. Like when he was with the Vikings and I would call, Brett would talk to me if I was covering that week's game. Usually after the network production meeting on Friday, we would talk, and I would call up to Minnesota and talk to Bob Hagan or Tom West, the PR guys, and say, hey, I'm doing your game this week. I need to get Brett on Friday. Can you make sure that happens? And they would always say, well, how long do you need? And I would always say 15 minutes. And I'd say, but it's going to take an hour. Just like this. Brett asked me yesterday how long we would need, and I said 15 minutes, and here we are at
15 minutes. And you made it go over again. I'm sick and tired of it, Ed. Every time we talk, we have a good time, so it always goes longer.
Well, so my deepest gratitude for doing this, and always, you're right, it is always fun talking to you. It's always been a lot of work covering you, but it was always very rewarding and worthwhile, and I always enjoyed the way you played. Guy who threw more touchdown passes than anybody in the history of the NFL and reacted to every one of them like a high school kid throwing his first one. His love of the game was always evident. And, wow, there'll never be another one like Brett Favre.
Well, let's just hope that this puts you over the top in the podcast top 10.
Well, I hope so, because we need to make a living, at this, because I'm out of a job under some restrictions right now, Brett. Quite honestly, I think if I delivered you to ESPN for that Monday night game where the fallback plan was Gruden, and you were still there, you probably could have protected me from this unemployment situation I face right now.
Well, I'm trying to protect you now.
Well, good.
Now I'm trying to carry all the weight here. I wish you'd pull yours.
All right.
Yeah, well, you keep wishing. You know what a vain attempt that is. Keep wishing.
All right. Well, there he is, the legendary Hall of Famer, Brett Favre, joining us.
Second best grandfather in the conversation.
There you go. That's right. That's Ed talking over me. That is the Doomsday Podcast. And that was the great Brett Favre, and boy, I owe it a lot to my good friend and co-host on Doomsday, Ed Werder. Just another huge name, and I think Ed, I think you're right. This may have been the biggest name of all the big ones you have brought in. But Brett Favre spending 45 minutes with us. Lots of incredible stuff there, and Ed, I just have to commend you. That was a well done by you, sir.
Well, we were fortunate that the Packers were on the schedule, and that Brett's personal schedule, he'd be able to get him in between lawn mowing sessions down there in Hattiesburg and taking care of his 3 grandkids now. And he was always so fun to cover, and for that very reason. I mean, he's got an opinion on every topic, and he's willing to address any subject, and he's just an entertaining guy with and who's a fun-loving guy.
Yeah,
I think that comes across pretty plainly.
And I'm pretty impressed that he had a chance to do anything he wanted in broadcasting. Now, he certainly couldn't. He had trouble letting football go. He came back a couple of times, but when it came to basically, hey, we'll pay you whatever, he just said, no, not really.
Well,
not really.
And under any circumstances, was like, we will make it so, okay, you don't do Monday Night Football and you're traveling all the time. How about halftime, at your house? We'll just have a satellite truck, positioned outside your home, and you can just do the halftime. And that's not him. He wants to be all in and do it well and be one of the best, or as you can see, he'd rather not do it at all.
That is true. Now, if you've seen,
wish we had that standard.
If you have seen Favre lately, Ed, you've seen the man will get he'll get a beard going on you, and I mean it'll get a little unruly.
Yeah.
And that's
It does
why
get unruly.
that's why I believe the man could use. I may send him some, and then of course he'll start endorsing them. I'm talking about Harry's razors, and one of the things I love about Harry's, I will say this: I'm a very sensitive man with sensitive skin, and I tend to cut myself a little bit. The Harry's, for whatever reason, when I use Harry's, the nicks don't happen. And that's big for me, and I really appreciate that. Harry's is so confident you're going to love their blades. They'll give you your trial shave set for free when you sign up at harrys.com/doomsday. Just pay for shipping, that's all. Harry's is all about a great shave at a fair price, and that's why over 3 million guys have switched to Harry's. They bought their own German factory. They had 100 years of blade-making experience to ensure the highest quality, and they've got that 5-blade razor. Man, other people have tried to pull this off. I've tried everything on the market. Love Harry's. Claim your free trial offer from Harry's today. $13 value for free when you sign up. Just cover shifting. Get that great ergonomic razor handle and get after it. And rich lathering shave gel. They'll throw some of that in. And the travel blade cover. Get your free trial set. Go to harrys.com/doomsday. Ed delivered big time, and I know he will again as we get into this Cowboys 35-30 loss. Ed, I know you're preparing as we tape this. You're preparing to do some sideline work for Westwood One out there in Kansas City with the Redskins. This is kind of a contender or pretender type game for the Redskins, I would say. But let's keep our focus looking back a little bit at that Cowboys 35-30 loss at home. Ed, this thing looked like Cowboys had it in hand. They were dominant in the first half. The stats were that bore that out, and everything was going their way. And then, much like, and I can remember some of these games over the years, Rams were able to get one of their 7 field goals. Boy, that Zerline guy, Greg the Leg, he was on his game. They were able to, with about 4 seconds left in the first half, basically at the gun there, get the thing to 24-16. And while, it didn't seem like, oh, okay, here come the Rams. Rams had done nothing. Ed, that at least gave them a foothold in the ball game, and then we know what happened in the second half. Cowboys end up getting steamrolled and lose that game to fall to 2-2. How much panic should there be in Cowboys land today?
Well, I mean, they gave up 35 points, even though they held the Rams to 7 field goals on defense. So it's a score that could have been far worse had they not been able to crisis management to the extent that they did. But I thought the thing that this game revealed the very most, and, if you talk to people with the Rams, as I did after the game, they considered this, a big boy win, they called it. That, they felt like this, going to Dallas and winning at Jerry World like they did against a team that, has a talent level and the recent success that the Cowboys have had, really validates Sean McVay and Jared Goff as a starting quarterback and what the direction the franchise is headed. For the Cowboys, the most troubling thing to me was that they had no means of stopping Todd Gurley. And if you look at the defense last year, while it wasn't very good, they didn't give up a single 100-yard individual rushing game or a single 100-yard receiving game, and Gurley nearly had both against them by himself yesterday. He had the 121 yards rushing and 96 or 94 receiving. And I thought that really pointed out how much the Cowboys missed Sean Lee in the game. Because I think without Sean Lee, not only making the adjustments and making plays as he does on a weekly basis, but not having him there sort of exposed Jalen Smith and his, mobility not being what it was before he suffered this horrific knee injury and the nerve damage. And I thought that's where the Cowboys really got worked over in the run game and using Gurley as a receiver. was they really exploited the loss of Sean Lee and the limitations of Jalen Smith in some of those situations.
Yeah, I tend to agree with some. In Jalen Smith, though he made some tackles. Some of those were happening, 15 yards downfield, and he seemed like he was chasing folks a lot, and that's a lot to put on him. I mean, first of all, he's out there playing next to a guy who's been around for a while. Durant had his moments, but there was a lot put on Jalen Smith yesterday. Now, I thought another interesting development on defense. This was one of the first times, Ed, and I don't know why, other teams didn't catch on and start this earlier, and we saw the poor guy Veldier just completely fall apart against DeMarcus Lawrence. This was what may be coming in the future. This was a team game planning for DeMarcus Lawrence and saying, we are not going to let him beat us. Whether we have to chip on him with a running back, whether we have to help over there with the tight end, this man is not going to beat us. And other than the strip sack that he had, he really didn't impact the ball game. Ball was coming out of there pretty quickly, and I think we saw the Rams really game plan around the strength of that Cowboys defensive line. And Ed, when they did so, really the pressure did not come from anywhere else, and that's a problem for the Cowboys.
That's been the biggest issue. That's what's caused them to lose to the Packers in the 2 playoff appearances they've had the last 3 years. And it's something you wonder if they're going to be able to resolve. They have David Irving coming back, obviously, this week, and he had a phenomenal game up in Green Bay last season. In a limited number of plays. He was Defensive Player of the Week, even though he only played like 20 snaps. And obviously Green Bay's got some offensive line issues, and they're coming to play the Cowboys this week. So it's a timely return for him. But I still don't know that they have enough edge rushers to affect Aaron Rodgers. They did against Goff. I think the other thing that gets overlooked is you mentioned the game planning, and surely that was some of the reason for the success. And that was a lot because Sean McVay, before he became the youngest head coach in the NFL with the Rams, was the offensive coordinator for Jay Gruden with the Washington Redskins. So here's a guy who has great familiarity, trying to find the weaknesses in the Cowboys defense and scheming against it, because he did it twice a year when he was with the Redskins. And so obviously he's not going to overlook much. He's going to have a great sense of their personnel and where he might exploit that defense. And I thought he did a remarkably good job of that, not only, as you said, using his tight end, using his backs to hit DeMarcus Lawrence on the way out of the routes. And they got the ball out of Goff's hands quickly, and it really helped that they were able to run the football as well as they were.
Yeah, I think that was extremely helpful, and maybe Sean Lee in his return can shore up some of that. Ed, the special teams has actually been a good thing for the Cowboys. In the first 3 games heading into that. Yesterday, some shoddy special teams play. In fact, when you basically hand a team 13 points, and I'm talking about the muff.
Brian Switzer.
Yeah,
muff.
The Switzer muff there, and they call it a fumble. It looked more like a muff to me, whatever you want to call it. He made a big mistake there. You know what that is, Ed? That's a young guy who's trying to do too much and trying to make a big impression early in his career. And he's also in college. I think one of the things that his calling card, kind of a fearless nature. I'm not gonna, fair catch it. Even if people are kind of down here close to me, I'm going to catch this thing and take off with it. And while that's admirable to a certain extent, you cannot do that to your team. Bad moment for him. Then he comes back on the next one. I think he was snake bitten at that point and let the ball sail over his head, and was sort of fortunate the ball, bounced back where they didn't have just horrible field position. But he was a little out of kilter. And then Ed, Pharaoh Cooper, the wide receiver and return man for the Rams. I mean, in this day and age in the NFL, you rarely see someone bring back the kickoff. If they can just get the ball in 25, that's what a lot of people opt to do. Sometimes I think that may hurt coverage teams because they sort of know that too, but you can't allow 66-yard returns. And so 2 major special teams miscues put the Rams in business. And Ed, that was a big problem on a day where the Rams had to resort to a lot of field goals to basically hand them great field position was, it was a really big part of this loss, I thought.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was troubling from an offensive point of view for the Cowboys, and we talked about the defense and the special teams, was just their inefficiency in the second half of the game. And it seemed to me that, Jerry Jones went out of his way afterward to acknowledge former head coach, Wade Phillips as the defensive coordinator of the Rams playing, he said, a key role in this game. And I think what he did at halftime was create a way and emphasize a point of keeping Dak Prescott in the pocket. And he wasn't nearly as effective. I think we've seen in recent games, this is a guy who's exceptional throwing the football when he's out of the pocket. And he did it early in this game for a touchdown to Bryce Butler on kind of a unscripted freelance play. And he did it a couple times in big situations against the Cardinals the week before. So that's going to be the emphasis going forward of defenses. It's going to be, keep Dak Prescott in the pocket, make him try to win the game from there. And I think he's capable of that. Not saying that. But a big part of what he does and what's unique about him is his ability to move, extend plays, run the zone read. And so I think it's going to be challenging in the weeks to come for Dak Prescott. And I think they've got to figure out a way to get he and Dez Bryant in sync, because they're clearly not. Dez had 98 yards receiving, had the big play early in the game. But overall, 5 receptions on 13 targets. You've got to get more productivity out of that when you're trying to get the receiver the ball 13 times. You've got to get more productivity than they got out of Dez Bryant yesterday.
Yeah, I thought, if you look at his targets as opposed to receptions for the year, it's an alarming number. In fact, you have to have a certain minimum as a receiver, and the quarterback certainly has a lot to do with this. But now there were great moments when I thought Dak extended plays, and I really thought that play where he spun away from Aaron Donald and found Dez in the middle of the field. I mean, I really thought for all the world that was going to be a play, and then he had another one on the same drive where he freed himself up and made a play. I thought for all the world those were going to be signature moments for Dak Prescott. Then he still had a chance at the end of the game. Coming down there, it didn't help that Terrence Williams dropped a ball, and then the Cowboys got in 3rd and 10, 4th and 10. Ed, I know it has to drive Cowboys fans nuts, and part of it was I think Dak thought there was pressure a little bit that wasn't quite there yet. You're 4th and 10. You got a game on the line. You got a chance to go down there and win a ball game. When you dump a ball off, even to a great runner like Zeke, about 5 yards short of the sticks. And I know you're in scramble mode there, but that's a pretty rough way to end a game with throwing short of first down.
The other problem you mentioned with Terrence Williams is, he doesn't catch the ball with his hands very often. He catches it against his body. And anybody in this league who lets the ball get to their pads and so forth is going to be somebody who's going to drop a lot of balls. And he did that in a very unfortunate situation.
Ed, I do want to say this. You have, for many years, you were part of that ESPN Fantasy League, and I know your team, and maybe Phil Yates was involved with you, the youngster.
He's my partner, yes, I chose.
Yeah. And I just want to give people the opportunity, though, to do the greatest thing about fantasy drafts, at least for those of us that have played for 20, 25 years and play with college buddies, are getting together for the draft itself. I want to tell you about something that more and more folks in our country are doing. If you love fantasy football, then you need to try my new favorite app. It is Draft, and I'm talking about draft.com. Now, if you want to go to your app store, just put the word draft in, and this will pop up. It's weekly fantasy football, but not like the other guys. On Draft, you play real live snake drafts with other people, just like in your season-long league. And, Ed, this is the part you would love, because you don't have as many sort of assistants and people in your life anymore that you can ask. I mean, other than Frito occasionally helps you, but
been relatively abandoned.
Yes, exactly. It's a draft that lasts for just 1 week, and there's no management. Just set it and forget it. And once you're done drafting, that's it. No trades, no waiver wire. Draft even takes care of the last-minute injuries for you. No salary caps. Playing a real live snake draft, just like you play with your friends in a season-long league. And you know what that means, Ed, snake draft. You go through the group, and then you come right back down the line, and that's how you do a draft. And you do it quickly. This doesn't take long. Come and join me on Draft Today. Download the app anytime. Just search Draft in your app store and join a game in minutes, or play right from your computer on draft.com. For a limited time only, all new players get a free entry into a draft when you make your first deposit, but you have to use our promo code DOOMS. That's DOOMS. That's right. Play a real money game for free just for using our promo code DOOMS. DOOMS on your first deposit on Draft. And all the folks across the country, maybe you're new to us. You said, I want to listen to Brett Favre, and then you realize I want to download and subscribe. Get involved in this draft in the App Store. Go to draft.com and come play for free with the promo code DOOMS, DOOMS. Ed, did you get all that?
I did, and I like that concept because I'm a guy who does it right the first time. And so I don't need to redo, and I don't need to trade. It's to my detriment if people are allowed to make moves after they put their original team together.
I think that is an important point by you, Ed. As we finish up our coverage, but just a big time podcast day. Doomsday has never been better, especially with Brett Favre looking ahead to the Packers game, and so good on so many different topics. Cowboys moving forward. We got to get a handle on this. My sign off. This is kind of what I like to call just kind of where Ed and I just fire off a couple of things on our mind at the very end of each podcast. And Ed, my sign off is tip of the cap. And Cowboys fans might not appreciate this, but hey, this guy's my friend, and so I don't sit there and root against the Cowboys. Don't worry about anything like that happening. But I like to see our friends have a good day or have an enjoyable experience. And Wade Phillips, did you see it, Ed? The cameras were on him, pumping that fist, had the long-sleeve white T-shirt under his coaching shirt, kind of an interesting look that he has. And he's pumping that fist, and everybody's going over to him. I sort of think, and I said this heading into this game, but we saw the reaction, and we know it to be true. Ed, this game's meant something a little more to Wade. And as Wade said to us in our one-on-one meeting with him, talking about his book a couple of months ago, I think that's the one thing that stuck in Wade's craw, even more than just getting fired by the Cowboys and Jerry Jones. It's that they basically brought his replacement in and paid him more money than him. Talking about Jason Garrett and sticking it to Garrett. And I thought Wade was pretty excited about it. And if Wade feels good, I feel okay.
There was a lot of tension between the two of them when they were on the same staff in Dallas, and it was a unique situation. Obviously, Jerry has always created unique situations for his coaches in that he's often kept people from one staff and forced them on the next head coach, holdover assistants, or loyal to Jerry and the organization, but maybe not as loyal to the head coach because they have no history with the head coach. And in this particular case, I think, Wade Phillips well knew, because Jerry had made it very clear his regard for Jason Garrett as a former Cowboys backup quarterback. And I think when he added him to the staff, he was going to have Bill Parcells add Jason Garrett to his staff had Bill come back for another year, because Jerry saw him as a future head coach and wanted him in the organization, so that it wasn't a situation like Sean Payton where, he would have been a great Cowboy head coach, but the timing never worked out. He wasn't available. His contract wasn't up when he was with the Saints at a time when the Cowboys had a vacancy. So to avoid that, Jerry puts Jason on Wade's coaching staff as the offensive coordinator. And then you're right, paid him more than he paid Wade Phillips to be the head coach. And obviously that creates a very dysfunctional situation, and I think that's what it was when Wade was the head coach and Jason was the offensive coordinator. And you heard players say it was like having, an offensive team and a defensive team, but no real team. And some people were loyal to and felt like the real authority in the organization was Jason Garrett, and other people felt like it was Wade Phillips. And So yeah, I think Wade found it enormously rewarding to come in here to Dallas and win that game, and to have Jerry say what he did afterward. I mean, that had to be better than getting the game ball from Sean McVay in front of all the players.
Yeah,
to have Jerry say to the media afterward, Wade Phillips was the difference in this ball game.
But
I wonder what Jason thinks of that.
Let me explain that one to you. This is my take, and I think I tweeted about this late last night or at some point. That is so classic Jerry. That was Jerry patting himself on the back. That was Jerry in the mode of, this is why I hired the man. Back in 2007, after some people thought I should have had North Turner, I hired Wade Phillips. This was classic Jerry. That was a maneuver to not only praise him. I'm not saying he doesn't like Wade, but by praising him, he could also reinforce, this is the man I once hired and brought here. And maybe people said I shouldn't have, but this is the
right, but he didn't hire him as a defensive coordinator like the Rams did, where he's obviously one of the superior coaches in football. You hired him to be the head coach, and even Wade admitted to us when we had him on the podcast that, hey, I've come to the realization that I'm not a great head coach, but I am, in my mind, a great defensive coordinator, and I think that's accurate.
Yeah. Well, I think Jerry at the time thought having maybe one of the best defensive coordinators to lead his team would be enough. And so, yeah, I do think that was Jerry sort of puffing his chest out, like one of my old guys. Like, by the time Jerry's through with this, he won't even be on the Bum Phillips coaching tree. He'll be on Jerry's coaching tree. Ed, you've been outstanding today, and this has been one of our top ones ever, and anxious for to get this out to everyone. It has been the Brett Favre. We'll call this just the Brett Favre podcast today, but it is the Doomsday podcast. And Ed, have a great call. By the time folks listen to this, they'll probably the Redskins will have fallen on the road to the Chiefs. That's my call. That's my
last undefeated team in football.
Yeah,
the game.
Yeah. It's going to be fun for you out there. It's a loud crowd, and the owners of that team, the Hunt family, Lamar's son Clark kind of runs that whole show. Dallas residents live right down the road from us, Ed. So if you see any of the Hunt family, give them my best and tell them to listen to the Doomsday podcast.
Lights are shining, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now, you don't see them anymore. This year will not be like the ones before. And the streets are all but empty, the bars have all shut down, and it's hard to find a friend inside this godforsaken town. That emptiness, it feels from your head down to your toes. I'm sorry, baby, that's just the way it goes.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.